So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Silicon Global online series. And I know many of you have come back time and time again for our series, and I do appreciate that. We started this Ask a VC series in April 2020 when COVID reared its ugly virus. And we've been going strong since then online, about 51 shows, believe it or not, with VCs from all over the world. Today we have Shervin Pishevar joining us from Miami. Hello, Shervin. How are you today?
Hello.
Good.
Great. Thanks,
Great.
Rebecca. It's good to be here.
Great. We're very happy that you're able to join us today. So a little bit of words about Silicon Dragon Ventures, where we are, how we got started. We got started after my first book, Silicon Dragon, which I think many of you have read, which was all about China's initial entrepreneurs. A lot has happened since then, as we know, like 15 years later, including I wrote a couple more books, Startup Asia, Tech Titans of China, and my new book is coming out soon, which I give you a big hint here. With the Appalachian Trail. But that's the only hint you're going to get for a little while until about a month from now. Okay, so let's move along and please keep signing in the meantime. So as I said, Shervin is joining us today from Miami. Shervin, you relocated to Miami from Silicon Valley in about 2018, right?
That's right. I moved in the beginning of 2018, and I was very inspired by Miami and its culture, its diversity, and really its immigrant refugee, mentality of like open to new ideas, new beginnings, and the Cuban population there is very similar to my kind of Iranian refugee backgrounds. I escaped the war and the revolution with my family and had bombs falling on me in the city in Tehran as a kid, and we had to escape. So there's a lot of commonality and common threads in the culture, and really wanted to try to bring parts of Silicon Valley to Miami, kind of this idea that I've said this before many years ago, when during the startup visa testimony in Congress, I said that Silicon Valley isn't just a physical place; it's an idea, and it's gone viral and it's spread around the world. And I believe in entrepreneurship as a movement. And Miami has been an experiment for the idea that we can create tech hubs anywhere in the world. And I'm happy to jump into some of those stories, and we have a very lucky with Mayor Suarez and having a great mayor and leader and leadership in the city that believes in this vision of Miami being a tech hub. And it's incredible to see. And for me, selfishly, I have a lot of my friends that I missed are now living and moving to Miami, and so it's nice to be able to see my friends more, and the creators and the builders of really the next great companies, or many of them have actually moved to Miami in the last few years.
Yeah, well, Peter Thiel is one of them, right? Peter Thiel, I think so.
Yeah, Peter Thiel, Keith Raboy, Jack Abraham, John Oringer, Emil Michael. The list goes on. It's some amazing people. Angela Benton has moved back, one of the greatest African-American entrepreneurs and creator of the first African-American incubator that brought a lot of the top African-American investors and entrepreneurs to Silicon Valley, has now moved back to Miami in the last couple of years, and we're investors in her company. It's amazing to watch the incredible talent that's coming, and the energy in Miami is incredible to see. And I mean, I joked to the mayor you know, every week is like another, it was an NFT week and then a tech entrepreneur week and then Miami Tech Week, and then there was F1 and every week was like more and more excitement. And I joked to the mayor, I said, you know, we need a Miami week off, you know, just let everybody rest before we continue building. And he was laughing. He was like, I'm gonna definitely announce that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Weren't you responsible in some part for that billboard in Silicon Valley about ditch Silicon Valley or to that effect and come to Miami beaches?
that's a great story. I mean, I basically I basically went to when I moved to Miami, one of my dearest friends, DJ Irie, who's Jamaican American and an incredible human being. And I had brought him into a number of investments like Uber and Hyperloop and others. And he helped us when we launched Uber in Miami in 2012. And but he introduced me to Mayor Suarez when I moved, and we really hit it off. And I realized I was in the midst of an incredible leader. You know, it reminded me of when I first met Barack Obama in 2007, and realized like this human is very unique as a leader. And so I realized we have an amazing leader in the mayor, and we have an amazing product in the city. And so we started, you know, basically talking about strategy of like, how do we make Miami a tech hub? And for me, I started, you know, experimenting with the idea of like, can we incubate new companies? Can we do what we did in Silicon Valley here in Miami? I ended up like moving 50 people to Miami across various companies that we were incubating and investing in. I would host friends over in Miami and do boat days and go to games, Miami Heat games, and showed them, you know, what the city was like. Many entrepreneurs were trying to decide between places like Austin and Miami, and I helped beat Austin out a number of times. We didn't win every single race, but you know, we also started talking to the governor, Governor DeSantis, about these ideas of moving, you know, tech companies and entrepreneurs to Miami. And he also is another great leader that is, you know, has tried to basically bring a lot of vibrancy and openness to in terms of like bringing entrepreneurship to Florida. So you have this like, you know, blessing of like leadership that's open to tech ideas and entrepreneurship. And so, you know, that's helped create an environment for more and more people coming. And then the mayor, you know, did that tweet, "How can I help?" It went viral. And I designed with my design team the billboard, and had the idea for a billboard that had the mayor's, you know, tweet that, but this time it said, you know, thinking about moving to Miami, DM me. And we made that into a billboard, and we, you know, put it out there to on billboards in San Francisco across from Uber and Airbnb. And the mayor's DMs blew up. I think he got thousands of DMs, and you know, every week there's a replenishment of talent. There's more and more people moving. The magic number that I think Paul Graham has talked about is like 10,000 developers moving to a city is a kind of an important milestone. And just in the last year, I think the numbers are over 2,000 engineers have moved to Miami. So it's not just the actual entrepreneurs, but the skill set. And then on top of that, you have in Miami and the Miami area local talent that we've hired, that we've accessed, that already exists. There's incredible universities like University of Miami, FIU, and others that are creating a pipeline of talent. And that engineering talent, that tech talent that is local, is also extremely diverse. And so you have this kind of confluence of talent migration into Miami from all over the world, and especially from the Bay Area, LA, New York, and you have local talent that's being, trained and, mixed together with this milieu of talent coming together, and it's created this magic quadrant that we all dream of in creating a tech hub. I also believe that this ability to create tech hubs is something that we have seen arise in other tech hubs around the world, wherever in Singapore or Hong Kong, or places in Africa now are becoming incredible tech hubs, like Lagos, and many other places like in Kenya. There's a lot of like mobile tech talent, a lot of crypto talent. Places are rising, like in Africa, like in Latin America. And this idea of what I call the remote valley starts to arise, the remote Silicon Valley, that during the pandemic was an accelerant, and Miami is obviously a beneficiary of that, but it was an accelerant of trends and a thesis that I believed in remote work. I didn't think that everyone needed to work in an office anymore. I knew that from the companies that I had built over a social gaming network, and I had developers in Romania. I had developers in Argentina. I had 100 developers in Argentina building games. I knew that going back to 2008 when I wrote an essay about this idea that entrepreneurship has gone viral. And it was Sheryl Sandberg that read that essay and reached out to me when she became chief operating officer at Facebook. We had lunch, she became a mentor, and she was moved by the essay. And the essay was about me being in Romania at dawn, writing this, working on this game that I flew out there because there was a developer who was only 18, 19 years old who had built a graphics engine more advanced than anything I'd ever seen for the iPhone. So we had a flight game in 2009 on the iPhone with this graphics engine that was more advanced than anything I'd seen. So I flew out to Romania to recruit him. And I did. And I wrote this essay about the fact that at this point, entrepreneurship is all over in pockets around the world, that America's greatest contribution, I think, to the world isn't just democracy, but it's also entrepreneurship and the belief that every human being can be an entrepreneur. And that's really my core belief as an investor and entrepreneur, is the dream and conviction that every human being can become an entrepreneur and should be an entrepreneur, and that the future, and we can get into kind of parts of my thesis of where the future is going and how I invest. But the way I invest, it touches on what I call kind of human behavioral change. And I look for signals of when human behavioral change happens. And usually that means there's cultural change. There's also behavioral change in terms of what types of products people need to be able to make their lives better, their worlds better. And whether that's Uber or Airbnb or other things that we invested in early on, before many people had heard of them, there's metrics and signals around human behavioral change that I chase, even to the point of like, one of my mantras is get on the plane. Always get on the plane. I say it to my teams. And if I hadn't gotten on the plane to Algeria in the middle of all the revolutions and given an entrepreneurship speech for President Obama at his entrepreneurship summit, I wouldn't have gotten the call from Travis from Uber to say, can I come to Dublin, Ireland, and to meet him? And I was like, absolutely, I'm getting on the next plane. I got on the plane and closed that first Uber investment for us.
So are you a big believer in serendipity then?
Well, I call it the Serendipity Engine. Yeah, so I would say probably yes to that question. And what I mean by Serendipity Engine is the mental framework and philosophical framework, the value of believing in serendipity and kismet is that you have to be open to it. If you're closed to serendipity, if you're closed off to opportunity, to new connections and new ideas, then you're ultimately like bouncing off ideas away from you, right? You're shielding yourself from disturbances, in the force, from new ideas. But if you're actually open, what happens is new things begin to appear. New opportunities and ideas begin to not just infiltrate your soul and your mind and your heart, but they begin to remix with the knowledge you already have and the knowledge that other people are trying to impart to you. And people can sense that openness. They can also, sense if you're closed off to those ideas and opportunities, and so they don't even bring anything up, or they don't say hello. And I've seen the power of serendipity in my own life. Coming from nothing and escaping war and revolution, coming to America with $35 in our pockets and for our family, and my dad and mom, mom and dad working 2 jobs, 9 day, to put food on the table and opportunity in front of us.
Wow.
And,
Where did you begin then in the U.S.?
we started off in the Washington, D.C. area in a little town called Silver Spring, Maryland, on 16th Street. My parents were educated, and my dad had his master's, my mom was a teacher. But when we came to America, it was during the Iran hostage crisis, and it was hard for my dad to get a job in media, which is what he had done, and he was a journalist in Iran. And so he had to start off as a taxi driver while doing his PhD at Howard University, and my mom was cleaning hotel rooms while going to community college to get her. She was programming back then. She was the one that taught me about computers, actually, and got my first lessons and kind of where computing was going to go. So I was just very lucky to have a mom and dad that pushed education on me and my sister and brother.
Sure.
And,
how old were you when you first came to the U.S.?
So that last time when we first, when we came and escaped the war and revolution, I was 6, 7 years old. And we came to America and, luckily escaped the war and the revolution. We had come when I was 2 for my dad's master's at Catholic University in DC. But we went back when I was 4, and that's when the revolution, the war started, and we got stuck. And my dad had to escape. He helped a lot of people get out of the country, and then we followed suit. But that was not before Saddam invaded, and so I went through that whole experience of watching bombs fall in the city, and dreaming about getting out to safety with my family. And that's why we're so just grateful for America, because sometimes I think we can, as Americans, could be hard on ourselves and our country. But it's good to be reminded of just how incredible America is. America is the greatest country on the planet, full of opportunity. Anyone that has the will to work hard and go after their dreams will be able to get there. And America is a place of second chances as well. And for our family, it provided this incredible, home to be able to, rebuild our lives and go after opportunity, educate ourselves, and give back. And we just last year, our family foundation, the Pishevar Haynes Foundation, was able, and my sister Sarah is the head of that. We were able to endow a chair at Howard University in Washington, D.C., where he got his PhD. And we endowed the Dr. Abraham Pishevar Chair in Entrepreneurship and Finance at Howard. And I've been trying to help in areas like introducing Howard's endowment to different top venture funds to be able to get access to those returns, and just trying to do our part to give back. And our foundation does a lot of work in Miami as well, with the IRA Foundation and many other charities as well, because giving back is a huge value for one of the values of our family. Never
Oh,
forgetting where we came from.
that's very good. That's very good. Thank you for telling us about that. And when did you come to California? I see you went to the University of California at Berkeley. And why did you go to California other than Berkeley? And what made you start your career basically in Silicon Valley?
I was very lucky to get into Berkeley at Cal, go Bears, for college. And I was also just lucky that I went to Cal right when the internet was really beginning. The browser NCSA Mosaic came out between my freshman and sophomore year of college. So I remember at the biology lab, computer lab, I went on the computer and I saw NCSA Mosaic with the little, animated N, and I just remember that was a tipping point for me, where I saw the future, and realized that the world was never going to be the same. That we're going to be able to access through this browser information at the tip of our fingers, in terms of like being able to have access to info that was a lot more democratic and accessible to the world than just going in like I was to the library and using like LexisNexis or
Yeah.
all these research tools or Dewey Decimal System of lore, to find information. And suddenly, the whole world was at our fingertips. And that was when I had one of those moments, like where, like Malcolm Gladwell talked about, where, you're born at a certain time. I was born in 1974. So I was lucky in terms of timing. If you look at like Sergey Brin or Larry Page or, many of our generation, we were all born around those years, similar to how like Gates and, Bill Joy and Steve Jobs, they were born in 1955, 1954, 53. And they were, 18 years old when the first, versions of computers started to come out. And then we were 18 when the browser came out and the internet came. So we were the lucky beneficiaries of just our, the fate and the kismet and serendipity of timing, and being in a place like Berkeley. I was surrounded by brilliant minds, and I was a bit of a nerd. I was in a magnet school for Montgomery Blair High School and Eastern Junior High, and they had tested some kids who were, 100 of us were the guinea pigs, and we got bused to this amazing school in Montgomery Blair. It took about an hour and a half each way. I had to get up at 5 in the morning, but we had Next computers and analytical chemistry labs, but we were also in a diverse school where it was like 80% African American and 200 different countries represented. The high school was like 2,300 people, so it was like a college. So suddenly that helped, really shape my, worldview and my ability to get along with anyone of any background and see each other all as the same people, and see diversity as a strength. And then, also see the future in terms of technology and where it was going. I begged my parents for an Apple IIc, put advertisements around the house, and my dad worked, for 3 months straight overtime in the cab to make the $3,000 to buy the Apple IIc with the little green monitor. And I wrote my first lines of code on that little thing.
Oh, wow.
And my sister bought Apple IIc, original Apple IIc recently for me, just to have it in my office to remind me of that moment. So I'm very grateful.
Oh, wow. So you're a techie from the very beginning then, but then you got into investing and you've had all these great deals. You told us about Uber and then Hyperloop One as well. So tell us how you got involved with Hyperloop One.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk and I were our friends, and we had met years ago because we were both had Founders Fund as investors in each of our companies. So, I had to follow him back in, I think, 2008 at a Founders Fund LP meeting. And he's showing rockets, and I had games on the iPhone, and I was like, made the joke of I had to follow these rockets with these little games. But we all laughed, and so we stayed in touch and became friends, and then I had done these trips when I was talking about human behavioral change.
Yeah.
I'd done these trips to Libya during the revolution and Egypt during the revolution, and I, similar to how Ernest Hemingway would go into the middle of the action to see what's going on in the world, like in the Spanish Civil War, I was inspired to go and see what's happening. So I went to Tahrir Square with Sean Penn, and we had become friends. So I went to Haiti to volunteer with his foundation and give back after the earthquake. And I had mentioned wanting to go see what's happening in Egypt and in Libya. And so I organized that trip, went to Tahrir Square, and went to Benghazi 2 weeks before Gaddafi was killed. I went to Tripoli a month after it was liberated, was able to meet these incredible, young people who were fighting for their freedom. And that was a very moving thing. And Elon saw that trip and said, next trip, let me know what you're going to do. And our next trip was going to be to try to bring internet to places where people could actually connect. And I had a dinner with Secretary Clinton and Jack Dorsey and Eric Schmidt and a number of other techies and tech leaders. And I brought up this idea that I had back then. This is 2010. I said, the last bastion of dictatorship is the router, and that what we need is to use satellite technology to bring in internet when dictators are trying to block connectivity to the internet. And that's exactly what happened in Egypt, for example. Mubarak shut down the internet backbone so people couldn't tweet, if you remember. Gaddafi shut down the cellular network. And Secretary Clinton loved this idea and actually followed through and, actually pushed that idea forward, the State Department. And President Obama later appointed me to the Fulbright board. When I went to Libya, he actually called my phone and wished me a safe trip. And I actually had this beautiful experience where when we went to Tripoli, one of our kind of guards, who was one of the Libyan young fighters, he was trying to get freedom for his people. He was like a 28 years old engineer from Germany who had flown back to fight for freedom for his people after 50 years of dictatorship, brutal dictatorship. And I asked him, what does freedom feel like? And he just had this ecstatic answer of freedom is everything. He was almost speechless, couldn't express, but you could tell what he meant is this freedom is everything. And he had on his wrist, he had the new Egyptian flag, the new Libyan flag with the liberation date, the revolution. I think it was February of 2010. And at the end of the trip, he gave it to me, and I was like, no, this is very few of the people had it, and it was very special. And he insisted. So I go back to Washington D.C. and I meet President Obama, and I had written a summary of what I experienced, and one of the things I said in there is, this line that I later published: fear is finite and hope is infinite. And what I found is, like, when you overcome your fears, like the fear of a dictator, it's very hard to go back. It's finite. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you see a candle and you put your finger through the candle for the first time and you're like, oh, I don't burn if I go fast enough. And you're like, okay, I'm not, afraid of the flame, as much anymore. And hope is infinite because you can always hope that the next time you try, you might fail the first time, second time, third time, maybe 10 times as an entrepreneur in some area of your life, personal and professional. But that one more time could be the time that you can succeed and achieve your goal and your dream. And so I actually wrote a mathematical equation proving it.
Oh, really?
It's actually, yeah, I'll send it to you. Fear is finite and hope is infinite. And so anyways, I give that to President Obama. And then I see the band on my arm, and I was inspired. I was like, oh, President Obama, I want to give this to you from Mohammed. This is 20-year-old engineer. And I called Mohammed and I said, you won't believe who's wearing your wristband. President Obama, and he gave his speech wearing that. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's great. These are great stories, and so glad to have you on the show sharing these. But talking about Hyperloop, I'm also thinking that's in transportation, and then you have a new company, Bolt Mobility in Miami, that's also in
transportation. Is just on the Hyperloop thing to finish that story. So that what we wanted to do is, places like Cuba, we believe that, having internet connectivity, whether it's through satellite or cable internet, the more connectivity young people can have, the more freedom they're going to demand.
Right.
And so our next trip was to be able to try to do that. And Elon wanted to come, and we worked with the State Department and White House, and we did. And we spoke to the youth there, and tried to push the idea of, like, getting more internet so that young people can seek their freedom ultimately. And I was on that trip that Elon and I talked about Hyperloop for the first time. This is 2013, and I had thought, he had talked about it as a passenger technology, and I had thought it would be great for cargo, to speed up commerce in the world at the speed of thought. Like, so if you purchase something online, you then go from purchase to manufacturing to distribution and delivery, all within 48 to 72 hours. If you're able to have a network of Hyperloops that can move cargo around the world at 700 miles per hour. So, and if you look at these cargo ships, they're the top 50 largest cargo ships in the world, pollute the world more than all the cars in the world. And as you've seen recently during the pandemic, they've increased their prices egregiously. So they have a chokehold on our supply chain in the world, and we need solutions to not only have clean transportation solutions for cargo and people around the world, have it be at the speed of thought, but also break these chokeholds that, in a similar way Uber broke the chokehold of taxi cartels around the world that were corrupt, that had corrupted the cities and municipalities with those types of, like, taxi licenses that were in the hands of very few people. And you had no improvement in customer experiences, and you had on-demand capabilities with the iPhone coming out to be able to do these new ideas. And transportation can also be an accelerant of not just economic change and behavioral change, but an accelerant of connectivity in the world. In the same way that when you came to a city that didn't have Uber, you felt like you were in the past. It was the same way that if you come to a city and there's no cellular connection, you feel like you're living in the 19th century.
Sure. Well, those are all great ideas. And I'm just looking at your list of companies that you've been involved in Miami. And there's a lot of really great ideas here that are reaching fruition. I was particularly entranced with this electric supercar, 3D printed carbon fiber parts. So a 3D printed car, electric supercar, and well, talk to us a little bit about
Yeah,
your approach
let
to
me talk a little
investing.
bit
You
about.
talked a little bit about, how you have a different approach to investing. Talk to us about that and how these deals came about.
Absolutely. I mean, on the investing side, like I had said, I look for human behavioral change, and part of measuring that is looking at the frequency of usage of when someone, like for example, in the beginnings of Uber, it was a new behavior, like taking out your iPhone and pushing a button and moving steel, suddenly was like a superpower. It was and people weren't used to that. They had to call a number and then hope that the taxi's going to show up or try to flag it down. And it was just archaic. And the ability to kind of turn cars into network devices using the iPhone was a brilliant insight. And so suddenly you have this kind of in the same way that you have HTTP protocols, you suddenly have transportation protocols that can turn any device, whether it's a scooter or a bicycle or a car or a Hyperloop, into a network device and route it efficiently. That's part of these ideas. And how I invest is to kind of look at that new behavioral change and then see how often people use it. In the Uber case, we were, in the 2011, first year of its operations, the numbers were like people were using it 3.5 times a month, and they were spending about $120 or more on average. And this is when there was no Uber X, it was just black cars.
Yeah.
And so people were spending as much on Ubers in the beginning as they were on cable. So you have the frequency and you have the value of that frequency combined. And suddenly you saw, oh, this could be a replacement for car ownership itself in an asset light world that I believed in. That's why same thing with Airbnb. When I first used it in 2010, I wrote an essay, a memo, that I believed Airbnb would be worth more than all the hotel chains combined. I used it in 5 different cities around the world, including Paris and Munich and London, in 2010, and realized that that was going to happen. And so, in terms of like incubating ideas along with investing, Sizzle was a company that we started in Miami. It was a cloud kitchen company centered on getting hot pizza to you while it's hot, and so cooking it while it's on its way to you. And and me and my brother started that company, and sister's on the board, and then GoPuff acquired it, and that's part of GoPuff Kitchens. So he's now traveling around the country, launching GoPuff Kitchens around the country. Da Vinci is a childhood dream come true. It's a small little company that, but we're trying to build a electric hypercar. We got the first one about to be done, and Coachera is another company that my sister started. She's a PhD in clinical psychology, and she started a coaching as a service company where you have like professional, high quality, world-class coaches who can be accessed by companies and anyone within the enterprise and any size company to kind of be able to subscribe to these types of coaching services. And that's usually been only the domain of top executives. And here it's like, let's democratize that capability. And then did a SPAC called DPCM, was part of that, and I'm on the board of advisors, and that they're taking a quantum computing company public, called D-Wave. And I'm a big believer in quantum computing. So maybe we can transition to some of the thoughts about the future and where quantum is taking us. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's quite a diverse group of startups that you're working with now. And it's very interesting that you are working with your sister and your brother.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty unique, I think.
Yeah, my daughter has her own stem cell beauty company. It's like I said, I mean, it's you know, every entrepreneur, every human can be an entrepreneur, and so that's a big value in our family. And it's something where, you know, my kids have grown up with, a bunch of like amazing and entrepreneurs coming to the house and board meetings and brainstorm sessions and so on. So they're crawling in between the table and they're little. So it's not surprising that my son and daughter are both entrepreneurs.
And
So,
all of you live in Miami?
yeah. So
Yeah.
most of the family is here, but they're also spread out.
Okay. So there is a question here that somebody wants you to elaborate on quantum computing and where the future is taking us. So I know that's an area that you wanted to talk about too. So
absolutely. Thanks for asking that. I think, well, in terms of where I think the next 25 to 50 years is going, a big core part of where my beliefs and my thesis is that quantum computing is just beginning to become commercialized. So you had some of the first companies going public that are quantum computing companies. I've been following quantum computing for well over a decade. Before it was mostly R&D, but the company we're taking public is called D-Wave, and our SPAC is called DPCM. It's a XPOA on the New York Stock Exchange. And so we're going through that de-SPAC process, but we raised $300 million for the SPAC. D-Wave is the oldest quantum computing company in the world. It's over 20 years old, led by an amazing CEO, Alan Baratz, who's one of the guys who's behind Java and is brilliant. And so they are doing some incredible work in quantum computing, and they also have the first quantum cloud products that enterprises are actually using. And so they started generating revenue, last year, and other companies have also gone public now for the first time. IonQ went public, and it was actually my previous fund invested in IonQ when it was a private company. And then Rigetti just went public as well for another SPAC. So you have three quantum computing companies going public. And that's just from a market perspective, the update. In terms of where the future is going, the reason why quantum computing is so profound is that I've seen things in the lab from some companies that I can't even talk about yet publicly in terms of like saying their names. But I've seen some things where within the next 10 to 15 years, quantum computers are going to go from, let's say, 50 qubits today that Google has in their quantum computer to 1 million qubits without like generating the heat that is a problem, because you have to keep everything really cold. And quantum cloud computing is the future. It's not everybody having a quantum computer in their companies. It's accessing an AWS for the quantum cloud. I call it cloud with a Q, QLOUD. But at 1 million qubits, you're talking about the power of God. It's an unfathomable amount of power in terms of computing power. And when you combine quantum computing and AI, for example, and the advances that are going to happen in the next 25 years, we're going to be able to do things like drug discovery really quickly, vaccine development incredible, and design incredibly quickly. And just in terms of like, drug discovery, you'll be able to see a situation where it sounds far-fetched, but I'll predict it here today on your show, is that every human disease known to mankind will be cured absolutely in the next 50 years. There's no question about that. And so we won't die from natural causes. We'll die from accidents. And so my advice to all my friends, family, everyone is like, don't do anything stupid in the next 25 years. Like, don't jump off a mountain or parachute or jump out of a plane or whatever, swim with the sharks, the great whites. But, I mean, live your life, but, be aware of the accident side of things if you're accident prone. Because
are you following your own advice? You're staying away from high surf and, boat accidents and.
I'm trying. Yeah, definitely. But I think it's the deeper part of this is we're going to go through civilizational change. Some of the areas that I work on, like New Cities movement that I helped start, I met with Joe Lonsdale in, I think, 2010, and I proposed this idea of new cities, of like, building new cities where citizenship is ownership, that the citizens can actually own shares in a private city. And then you add crypto to that, and now you have the founder of Ethereum writing that Crypto Cities essay based on these ideas. And Balaji, who is an incredible thinker and has huge influence in the world, is also one of the new cities and startup cities movement leaders. And we started talking about these ideas over a decade ago together, along with Joe Lonsdale. We hosted New Cities dinners at Joe's house and my house, and brought together thinkers. And it's turned into a movement where you now have Prospera, Praxis, Cul-de-sac, all these startups that are starting in the new cities world. And Balaji wrote this book called Network States, which I highly recommend to your audience to buy. Network states is this idea of kind of cloud cities, network states, communities coming together without even initially a physical location. And that's where Praxis, where I'm involved, is doing, is thousands of members in the Praxis community that are all looking to move to a city of their own. And so I think the future is going to be about civilizational change, when humans are living to an average of 150 years instead of 78, 80. What does that mean? And you're not going to retire at 65. You're going to retire
too many of us, though. But Shervin, there's
you're going to retire at 120. There's a homeostasis that will have to be balanced out. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of systemic changes, both in terms of, and I call it systemic investing, in terms of higher approach things. There are things systemically broken with our world, but the speed of innovation outpaces the breakage, the fissures in our world. And sometimes we're overwhelmed with the breaks, and we're either underwhelmed or not yet aware about the changes coming down the pike. And those changes are both great opportunities, but also present dangers that we have to be aware of. And we have to manage these breakthrough innovations and use them to heal the world rather than break the world.
Where do you see the need for breakthrough innovation? What areas that do you think the world needs fixing in, that you would concentrate your own efforts around?
Well, I do believe that the idea of network states is actually a deep idea, deeper than a lot of people realize. And what I mean by that is we're living in a world of nation states. And it's a product that was invented, thousands of years ago, and has defined the boundaries and borders of our understanding of our world. and it's led to a lot of war. I mean, we're watching this happen in Ukraine and Russia. That's an absolute tragedy. And over what? Right? And why?
Definitely.
And if you look at the 20th century and the amount of wars that we went through, from World War One, World War Two, the Holocaust, the tragedies, genocides, you know, whether in Africa or in Germany and Europe, these are things that have led to unbelievable amount of I think, you know, tragedy in the sense of waste of resources and time and life and energy, and that there are new models that are being developed where I think it begins in the digital universe, in the digital world of you know, this idea of network states, of communities. People have a longing to belong to a community.
Based on common interests rather than location. It's based on common interests, right?
That's right. That, like,
Okay.
where you're born
Right.
is not the definition of your identity, and many people are finding identity in the digital world. And so
Sure.
I think what's going to happen is what we're predicting is essentially network states are going to develop. Network communities are already developing, but they're going to form into more defined network states. And then people are going to go into essentially what I call these kind of e-city states. And I think the future is going to be more about city states and nation states.
Yeah.
That these new cities and startup cities are going to become, and crypto cities are going to become more and more prevalent.
So maybe this is a new idea for Sandbox, because their whole premise is built on who you're living next to or buying that plot of land. But if you could buy like an area where everyone has the common interest, that would be interesting, right?
Yeah, there will be many different companies, and on a final note, there is this idea of like in the past, entrepreneurs were creating companies, and what I'm predicting is entrepreneurs are going to create cities and communities where citizenship is ownership, and people are going to have shares and ownership in these private cities that can go public. Their GDP becomes their valuations, and that's going to create new models for existence. So, well,
that certainly is a new idea. And do you think that the metaverse is a facilitator of this idea?
I think the metaverse is a potential form factor that can, you know, evolve over time into these types of network states as well. So, you know, whether it's even communities on Reddit could develop into network states. You know, metaverses can develop into network states, and so that's kind of the idea.
Okay, so a comment from one of our attendees here. It's obvious that you have a high EQ, emotional quotient. Any comment on the 160 IQ Stanford grads who, his own comment, have an EQ of 60? Woo, it's really slamming it to those Stanford grads. Those automatrons is what you're saying, I think Hal is trying to get at. But a comment on this emotional quotient idea, and you know, how that could be a lot better than just the high IQ of some techie only person.
Mm-hmm. I've seen some incredible you know, graduates from Stanford and funded them, and so you know, there was Alchemy and the Seed. I've seen some, you know, Stanford grads, even though I'm a Cal grad, who have amazing EQ and IQ. So I don't think, you know, I know it's you know, they're joking and everything, but I do think EQ is important, IQ is important. All of those things together combined, appreciation for diversity, openness to new ideas. You know, the greatest entrepreneurs are ones that are going to be able to, you know, connect to people from all aspects of life and cultures.
Okay. So there's an investor related question here about someone who's in an accelerator program, and they want to know whether they should reach out to investors before the cohort finishes, in
That's a
case the
great question.
macro environment worsens by the time of demo day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I do want to say, just on the macroeconomic environment, just to give him or her some hope. I lived through the dot-com crash in 2000, 2001. I lived through the financial crisis in 2009. And 2022 is looking like, something like a 2009. And in terms of the market correction, and then different economic indicators. But the one thing I know for sure is that the greatest companies and entrepreneurs arise out of the dust of those types of corrections, and also the greatest investments and greatest fund returns for early stage investing happen. The last 4 to 5 years, people lost the plot a little bit. The valuations got skewed early stage, and we had a lot of mega funds kind of coming into seed rounds and Series A rounds. And so, if you look at 2001, and then you fast forward 2 to 3 years later, suddenly you had Facebook, and you had LinkedIn, and you had SpaceX and Tesla, and then you fast forward to 2009, and fast forward a couple of years later, and suddenly you had Uber and Airbnb and Warby Parker, and I was a rookie VC in 2011. So my timing was very lucky that I was able to invest at a time when these gritty entrepreneurs, they were living through a period where venture money wasn't as available, but they were just grinding away at their idea and had the discipline, the focus, and the grit to bear a bear market and not lose their focus and not give up on their dream and go back to a good a job, instead of like believing in themselves and risking everything for their idea and ultimately changing the world because of their ability to believe that hope is infinite and that fear is finite.
Yeah. And Brian, I think that answered your question about what's your equation for hope. I think it might have answered his question about that.
I'll send you the proof.
Yeah,
later.
good. And so today, given the environment and this uncertainty, are you speeding up your investing or slowing down or staying the same?
There's more to come on that. I do believe that like I said, 2001 and 2009 were followed by a couple of years just in the next year to 2 years after by unbelievable opportunities and incredible returns for early stage investing. I'm an early stage investor. I believe in funding ideas and entrepreneurs at the earliest stages. And I've been lucky to be able to do that in all cycles. I do believe that this is a good time to be doing early stage investing, which is my passion and my love.
Sure. Well, we're going to have to come back to you and have you on the show again to talk a
really
little bit more
enjoyable.
about your next stage and what you're planning to do. So we really enjoyed having you on the show today. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for joining us as well. Let me just
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I'll say a few final remarks about our reason for being here. We have our Silicon Dragon Circle membership. I think I already mentioned the Appalachian Trail, but we have our Silicon Dragon Circle membership, so all of you could join in on that and become part of our community, the Silicon Dragon nation state. Okay, and then please stay tuned for our upcoming shows and my next book, which is coming out about some areas outside the coast, outside the normal kind of places. So I will be sharing more details about that soon. And thank you for our sponsorship from Invest Hong Kong. It's been a great partnership. And Shervin, we're really looking forward to having you back on the show again. And keep us tuned in with what you're doing. And we'll keep you tuned in with what we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca.
All right. Thank you. Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.